Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we take a deep dive in a single section of today's reading and examine a single question from that passage that it points us to. Today I'm joined by Zack, Unkenholz, and we're looking at Genesis chapter 9, and beginning in verse 18, it says, "The sons of Noah who came out of the boat with their father were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham is the father of Canaan. From these three sons of Noah came all the people who now populate the earth. After the flood, Noah began to cultivate the ground, and he planted a vineyard. One day he drank some wine he had made, and he became drunk and lay naked inside of his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw that his father was naked and went outside and told his brothers. Then Shem and Japheth took a robe, held it over their shoulders, and backed into the tent to cover their father. As they did this, they looked the other way so they could not see him naked. When Noah woke up from his stupor, he learned that Ham, his youngest son, had what he had done. Then he cursed Canaan, the son of Ham. May Canaan be cursed. May he be the lowest of servants to his relatives. Then Noah said, May the Lord, the God of Shem, be blessed, and may Canaan be his servant. May God expand the territory of Japheth. May Japheth share the property of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. Noah lived another 350 years after the great flood. He lived 950 years, and then he died." So, Noah, when he comes off the boat, becomes a farmer, a vineyard dresser. And we see several times how in this passage, inexperience can create problems. So he creates this vineyard from cultivating the ground first. Based on the original language that we have, it appears this is a new career for Noah. So this, if you look at the way it's phrased, it seems that this is not something he did before, that this is something that's brand new. And so he becomes the first mention of strong drink and drunkenness in Scripture. I'm not going to sit here and say it was the first time that it had ever happened. I'm just saying it's the first mention of it that we have in Scripture. It's the first mention we have of strong drink or alcohol. It's the first mention we have of drunkenness. There's no way for us to know if this is the first time ever, just the first mention. And his experience with it could be the cause of his drunkenness. So the fact that he hasn't raised wine, now suddenly he's got it. Let's try it. He doesn't know how many glasses it takes, before he stops. And I was telling him before we went on the air about the old country song, "Tequila makes your clothes fall off." So he's the first example of getting drunk and naked. So he may not have known what the outcome would be. We have to give him that benefit. Then his youngest son, Ham, walks in on him and goes out and tells it. And God curses Ham's youngest son, Canaan. Now, this is an interesting concept in itself. One, you don't think Ham is the youngest based on the way it is always listed. He's always listed in the middle, but it specifically says in this passage that he's the youngest. And then God curses his youngest son, who is Canaan. Ham doesn't get cursed. And so his own inexperience, maybe he's never dealt with a drunk person. Maybe he's never seen a naked man before. Maybe he doesn't know what to do. I mean, there's lots of things. I've dealt with a lot of situations that there are no manuals for, right? You don't know what to do, so you do the best you can, and sometimes you do the wrong thing. Sometimes you make a mistake. And it's interesting here that Noah doesn't receive a curse. Ham doesn't receive a curse, but Ham's son, youngest son at that, is the one that receives the curse. So that's the way I've read this. I don't think I've ever thought about it in those terms, but that's the way I approached it this time as I did some reading to understand this was his first time. So the question is, how can we overcome inexperience? And what steps can we take to avoid some of the pitfalls of inexperience? How can we overcome inexperience? And what steps can we take to avoid some of the pitfalls?
Well, I think in our time, we have the benefit of having billions of other people who have all had their own experiences that we can potentially learn from. So one thing I would say is surround yourself with people who have experience, right? Who have gone through things that maybe you're looking to get into, people that you can talk to, that you can learn from. It's one of the reasons why we have schools and colleges, because we learn from people who have experience, who have been through these things or know more about these topics than we do. And so you surround yourself with people who have experience. The thing I would say is you can read, we have the benefit of if there's something that we want to know more about, we can read about it. If we want to know what it looks like even to be a believer in God or a Christian, we've got the Bible that we can look to. And even outside the Bible, there's been many incredible writers who have talked about what the Christian walk looks like that we can look to, like C.S. Lewis or R.C. Sproul or many others. But I think also too, what this is interesting as we're reading this passage is, talk to people who have made mistakes before. One of my favorite classes in college was called Entrepreneurial Failures was the class, and we talked about some huge business mistakes that were made, but then also too, we brought in people who had failed businesses, which was very bizarre in concept, but was one of my favorite classes because you would hear from them like, hey, it is a struggle to work with family. Here are the things you need to know about that. Or, hey, this is why you should be careful about who you allow to invest in your company or how. And so that was a fantastic class because we learned from people who had made mistakes and learned from them and evaluated their experience and their mistakes, and then we're able to pass that on to us. So we have the benefit of that. In Noah's time, we talk about Noah's an experience. Sometimes if you're trying something new, just take it easy. Take it slow. Don't go overboard immediately. And in terms of his son's experience, was it Canaan? Who was it?
Ham.
That's right. Ham who walked in on him. And that, I don't know what you do in that situation, but it seems that his first move is to go and tell his brothers, check out Dad, he's naked right now,
right?
Which probably isn't.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's kind of an
well, when I read that, the go and tell on somebody seems to be the when your first response is not to help them, but to expose them. He took someone who was already exposed and exposed them further. The hard part with inexperience is there are times you don't know you're inexperienced, so you're significantly younger than I am. And you're still young enough that there are things you don't know that you don't know.
Exactly.
You don't know, right? Yeah. You don't even know you don't know them, right? That is a challenge. We should be aware that if we want to know, we can know, right? We live in an age where we can know. I tell people all the time, if you want to know how to do anything, search for it on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
There's a video to show you how to do it. There is no excuse for not knowing if you want to know. The problem is there are times that we may not know where to look. We may not even realize what some of the pitfalls could be. So we don't know that we don't know that we should be asking ahead of time. And, I think the advice to go slow, to try to prepare yourself as much as you possibly can is good advice, because it's so easy to get ahead of ourselves and to take risks that are unnecessary. We can learn from other people's failures. We can learn from other people's successes. And we have an enormous amount of resources available to us in this world today. And I can't imagine. There are times that there are most of those things were created out of desperation. I think of how did chitlins become a meal? Somebody was desperately hungry.
Are chitlins like? Wait a second. If I'm remembering this correctly, is that like the organs?
Guts.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Who wants anybody's guts, right? But somebody was hungry. That was a desperate.
It took guts to eat that. Yeah.
They had to be desperate to do it, right? And often we're in positions of desperation that cause us to do those things. In Noah's case, I don't know that he was desperate. I wonder how I would felt. Well, if I'd been stuck on a boat for a year plus,
I'd want to drink.
I would too. That's the honest to God's truth. I would be like, give me some relief. I've had enough of these folks. Yeah. If this is the first time he's dealt with something, I think if any time there's a first time for us doing anything, our first date, I want to say our only marriage, but our first marriage, our first engagement, our first job, our first business, our first whatever, we should be asking some people. We should be getting some advice so that we don't make some horrific mistakes. And the problem is, Noah at this point, he can't claim youth as a problem because he's 600 years old, right? He's not young and dumb. He's just dumb.
But he really doesn't have anyone to go to.
Right. That's right. He's the only one left. Like if he don't know it, who does?
Yeah.
I struggle a little bit with the ham thing because I just don't understand. I mean, we're not given clear explanation other than he went out and told it.
And it said that he woke up from his stupor. Does that mean that he's no longer drunk? Or did he he's
hungover?
He's hungover when he curses his son, Maybe he meant to curse him and accidentally cursed his son. We don't know. It is a very bizarre story. Like, I was talking to someone who has been a Christian for many, many years. I think they're very strong in their faith. They had no idea about this story. And I talked to them about it, and we were reading it together. Then.
This story, though, is the genesis for much racism in the church.
Really?
Oh yeah. So you should go read this. Like most, many people would take the view that Ham went to Egypt or in that vicinity, Ethiopia, Africa, if I remember right. And they became the darker skinned humans. And it says this passage was used to justify slavery because he says he's going to serve. This passage has been used for lots of racial undertones. Even my own grandmother, I remember one time saying something to me because that's how she was taught. That's what she was taught growing up. And it's really, really, it has a lot of nuances and has been used for a lot of things. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today for this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back with us tomorrow as we finish up a conversation this week on the book of Genesis.